So, you want to save the world with clean energy? Make money doing it? Confused about the economic and technical realities of residential and commercial solar, batteries, heat pumps, EVs? Want the real-world scoop on new energy technologies, not manufacturer hype? Then tune in to the Weekly Energy Show, hosted by Barry Cinnamon. Insights from Barry's 40-plus years in the solar and energy industry will help you understand the future ways we'll generate and consume energy. And now, here's Barry.
Welcome to this week's Energy Show. Now, the OBBB, or One Big Beautiful Bill, as the polite people call it, is now law in the United States. That law eliminates the 30% tax credit for residential solar, and it adds restrictions to the 30% tax credit for commercial solar. And residential leases and what we call PPAs, or power purchase agreements, are also effectively commercial, even though they're on a residential building, because they're taking advantage of Section 48E of the tax code. So effectively, the price for cash and loan purchases, loans effectively cash, for all solar systems is going to go up by 30% in 2026. So, the business is booming right now. We're talking about being the fall of 2025, but December 31st, 2025, if the system is not installed, based on whatever the official Treasury Department rule is, there's no more tax credit. So solar leasing's more complicated, and effectively it's increasing the leasing prices because there's other restrictions. And then with commercial, you also have these domestic content rules, you have safe harboring considerations, and you have these things called foreign entity of concern issues. It all complicates pricing and product availability. In any case, nevertheless, every solar contractor I know is working like crazy to get systems installed by the end of the year. I think 2025 is going to be a record year for solar and battery installations in the U.S. 2026, not so much. So smart companies are planning now for 2026, and that raises two questions. First, what should solar contractors do to succeed in 2026 and beyond? And second, what should solar and battery customers, homes and businesses consider when evaluating products and installers? So, I'm asking some of the people that I know who are the smartest in the industry, and this week's guest is Raghu Belur. He's the co-founder of Enphase and their chief product officer. And Raghu and I met in 2008 when he tried to sell me this crazy microinverter thing. We adopted it fully at Akina Solar in Westinghouse, and we've been friends and partners ever since. And Enphase, I have to say, it's without a doubt his consistently been, it's 16 years, consistently the most successful rooftop solar inverter. So, welcome to the show, Raghu.
Hey, Barry, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here. I think we are in the midst of great change. And with change, yes, there are challenges, but there are also lots of opportunities.
Yeah. And you got to figure out those opportunities. You got to figure out where the danger parts are and just make sure you're focusing, on the opportunities. So tell us a little bit about Enphase's new products. And we all know that you've got much bigger microinverters, but tell us about some of the new stuff that's available now or coming down the pike.
Awesome. Yeah, happy to do so. I think, we are on a continuum as far as innovation is concerned. We have all heard the old adage, especially relevant in Silicon Valley, innovate or die. And we take that to heart. So we are always developing new products. We are developing new technologies and new products. And because of the way we are architected, specifically we are AC coupled, so every element of our system can almost develop independent of the other. So solar develops on its own trajectory or innovates on its own trajectory. Similarly, the battery innovates on its own. The EV charger innovates on its own. The software innovates on its own. Of course, we bring all the pieces together. We think about backward compatibility, etc. We think about how to make our systems future-proof. So you can start with solar only, and tomorrow you can add a battery. Tomorrow you can add an EV charger. You can make the EV charger bidirectional, and we'll talk some more about that as well. But our innovation cycle is on a continuum. It's on a treadmill. So, for example, we are on IQ8 right now. We just released our 4th generation system that includes the IQ8 and this new 4th generation battery that is 10 kilowatt hour building block, 60% less wall space, with a very significant change in the balance of system. And what that includes is you no longer need the system controller. You just need a combiner. Load controls embedded in the combiner. You can connect your EV charger to the combiner. And of course, the meter collar. The meter collar is the MID, or the microgrid interconnect device that isolates the whole home in the event of a grid event.
So we're,
grid outage.
just running as fast as we can, installing a lot of the Enphase 10C batteries with the new combiner, and it's been going really smoothly. And I have to hand it to you, when I saw the first presentation, it's like, boy, you only need 2 boxes on the wall. That's really good. You don't have to unpack that much stuff.
I think part of the innovation engine that drives Enphase is learning and getting feedback from folks such as yourself. So we are always getting feedback from our partners saying, okay, it always starts with what's not working well, right? We want to know that first, what's not working well. And the most vocal partners are the ones that we always listen to because they are vocal because they care about Enphase and they care about our products. They care about giving us good feedback. And so we have taken a lot of learnings from generation 1 of our battery, generation 2 of our battery, generation 3.
I'm counting all those that I've installed.
Yeah, every one of, and you're right. And we looked at things like, okay, Gen 1, Gen 2, we saw that wireless was challenging, so we moved to CAN, doubled the power in Gen 3, which was all very well received. This was the feedback from the market. And then the final feedback from the market was, hey, listen, you got too many boxes on the wall. It doesn't look very nice when you have that many boxes on the wall. Product works great, but there are just many boxes on the wall. So started consolidating. And the way I think about Gen 4 is it's the culmination of 3 generations of batteries that we have put out, and improving the balance of systems, quite substantially by elimination of the system controller. There's only a combiner, integrating load control, like I said, EV charger, and PCS is built into all elements of the system. And you have a 10 kilowatt hour building block with a lot of capabilities.
And so one more thing, and when I saw this, I went through the Enphase training and I saw this and I said, Enphase is really listening to customers that are having trouble configuring all of their monitoring systems, configuring those CTs. And that is when you have a complicated system, you've got CTs here, you've got CTs there, they have to be all wired a special way. And you guys built it all into the combiner box. So it's almost impossible to screw it up. That was our number one issue with customer satisfaction is sometimes a one wire, the CTs could be inverted, or when you add another CT, you had to change the original one. And so by making sure that's all integrated, really, really smart. So that combiner will be
I think we've done, I was joking about this with someone. I'm hoping that in the not so distant future, the word CT will be out of our vernacular. There are no CTs with the 4th generation to install. There are production CT, which was already there, that was inside the combiner. The battery CTs are now inside the combiner. The consumption CTs, the whole home consumption CTs, is now embedded inside the meter collar.
The meter collar. That's it. That's the key.
So, and now if you have an EV, the EV charger, Enphase EV charger has an CT embedded in it. So all the distributed elements, the load control has a CT in it. So you know exactly what the load's doing that you're trying to reject. The thinking has changed. You and I talked about this, Barry, quite some time back. Instead of thinking about partial home backup, we have to flip that on its head. It's always whole home backup with load rejection. That's the smart way of doing it.
Absolutely. I don't care. I don't need to monitor how much power my little cell phone charger is using, or even like for a refrigerator, it's de minimis, but I need to know about the big stuff. Well, all these things are really, really cool, and I'm very, very impressed with the way you guys are kind of coming out with these new products, and it's just absolutely the way to go. All right. While we're on the topic, what's coming down the pike? Not necessarily something that's confidential, but what can we look forward to?
There's a lot of very, very interesting things coming down the pipe. Starting with, I didn't mention software. I would be remiss if I didn't mention it. Software is kind of heart and center of what we do in addition to all the hardware that we develop. Because the software is what ties all of these pieces together, right? The home energy management software, the IQ Energy software. It's all AI ML based. We as a company, as I've said, we are data rich. So we've used that to train our models, and we use that to deliver the best economics for the homeowner. So for example, things like, very soon we'll be doing things like day ahead markets, participating in day ahead markets. So at 11 a.m., from an exchange, we're going to know what the buy and sell rate for energy is for your home. And the software has to learn how to manage that. We are all very active in VPP, right? We have Enphase as about more than 200 megawatt hours of batteries under VPP. But the battery is the first flex resource. But soon, we are now doing unidirectional EV charging, but bidirectional EV charging is around the corner.
And V2X. Yep.
V2X, V2G, V2H, right? We have a beautiful demonstration of a very simple V2G, V2H system. And so, software is becoming more sophisticated. But let's go back to the hardware elements again. Again, like I said, the innovation engine is such that each element of the system can almost develop on its own. So IQ9 8 is going to move to IQ9. IQ9, from a technology point of view, is an absolute game changer. It relies on a new technology, new wide bandgap technology, a semiconductor technology called gallium nitride. What that does is it reinforces the original thesis that Martin and I had when we started the company, that when you build a semiconductor-based device, which is what our micro is, you really don't asymptote in cost, right? You don't asymptote in cost. You know that you're going to do more and more integration into silicon, right? You're going to use more and more advanced technologies. And today, and here it is, the first significant change. We've been on a very powerful cost reduction trajectory. And now here we are entering the era of GaN, which will put us on a whole new trajectory as it pertains to cost and performance. Is there something else beyond GaN? 100%.
Probably. Yeah, definitely.
100%
Yep.
There's something beyond that. So it really is very powerful from a technology point of view. We just launched our 4th generation battery, which I think is fantastic, but there's more to come. There's a 5th generation that is already left our CTO team and is now in our engineering team, right? So they are actively in development of the 5th generation battery.
The products are terrific, and as usual with Enphase, they'll see a lot of market success. What impact will these new products and technologies have on consumers post the end of the solar tax credit?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, right? If you think about, I do a lot of thinking about this. I ride a bike. You and I talked about that. It's a lot of thinking time, right? I think as an industry, we need to look at all aspects of the system, all aspects of the ecosystem, right? Continue to drive down costs, increase performance, increase reliability. That's the core tenet of what we do as a business, right? Drive down system level costs, drive down customer acquisition costs, drive down financing costs,
Drive down installation
drive
costs.
down product and installation costs. Yep. So a lot of things that we can affect, right? So we obviously are, like I said, all the innovation that we do is always around cost, performance, and reliability, right? We continue to do that with IQ8s, moving to IQ9s. We just released R4. R4 will eventually move to R5 and R6 and beyond. EV charger is becoming bidirectional. We are super excited about that product that will come sometime next year. So we are going to keep improving on the product side. Let's start from the very beginning. It starts with customer acquisition, right? So obviously, as the industry customers become more brand aware of the industry at large, people start asking for alternatives to our friends in the utility whose prices are continuing to go up, and they go, hey, what's my alternative? It's not sticking a small modular reactor in my backyard, which will not happen, won't interconnect for the next 15 years. They're saying, listen, what's my alternative? It's solar and batteries, right? Solar, batteries, and now I also have EV chargers and all the electrification that's happening within the home. And then you go, okay, now how do I design the system very, very effectively? I have to pitch SolarGraph here. SolarGraph is our design and simulation tool. I think it's by far the most sophisticated tool that's out there in the industry that allows you to design very precisely to meet the homeowner's needs of a comprehensive energy system, including things like PCS can all be embedded inside SolarGraph, right? And then comes the product itself, right? How can you drive down the product cost? How do you increase the reliability of the product, increase the warranty of the product? We used to be at 10 years on the battery. Now we are we are at 15-year warranty on the battery. Inverters are already at 25. You'll see that'll continue. Warranties will continue to improve. Performance continues to improve, right? On the back end, how do you do customer care, right? So we do offer, in conjunction with our partners, something called Enphase Care. Take care of the customer after they've done the installation. And then, of course, there's the financing piece, and I'm sure we'll talk a lot about it. So I think in some sense, while the industry at large, we were all working on reducing the cost of the system, I look at the expiration of 25D, the cost and loan, and then the termination eventually of 48E are all catalyzers for us to drive down, to become much more efficient. And that's the order of the day. Is we just need to become more efficient and drive down costs.
Well, and
we'll
so-
all have to do our part.
Yeah. And so looking at that loss of the tax credit, which is 30%, among the things that you had just mentioned, how long is it going to take for us to get the cost down by 30%, or electricity costs will effectively go up by another 30%? Because I'm expecting that in 2 or 3 years, we're going to be kind of back to where we were before, hopefully even better.
Yeah, I think it's multiple things that are going to simultaneously happen, right? Customer acquisition cost needs to get driven down. One example of a way to reduce your customer acquisition cost is go back to your existing customers and sell them.
Diversify or sell
Sell them new batteries.
Yeah.
Sell them more batteries. Sell them more solar. All that's possible with Enphase. Sell them a heat pump. Sell them, an EV charger. Sell them a bidirectional EV charger, right? So
and then when they buy all that,
Yeah.
then you got to sell them new solar panels or more solar
And
panels
more
because
solar
their
because
consumption goes up.
it-
And then we
because
just got to figure out, most places around
So-
the country are okay with that, but we got to figure out how to get through that with California because they limit the additions you can make.
I think there's a 150% limit right now.
Yeah.
So I think it was put in place in anticipation of just demand going up. So that's one. The second thing is, of course, utility rates, right? Look, utility rates, I don't foresee an externality that's going to drive or reduce utility rates. It's only going to go up. If you really think about it, you and I have talked about it.
Yeah.
Our demand per home is going to more than double, right? Each EV consumes 15 kilowatt hours. You have 2 EVs, you got an additional 30. Your base home consumes 30. I just doubled my power. You add a heat pump, that's another 15. I'm at 75 kilowatt hours per home. I did read a study that said by 2035, average consumption of energy per home in California is going up by 40%.
Yeah.
And now you can think about what the demand on the network is from the hyperscalers, all the data center hyperscalers. What was 3 to 4% of average of data centers were consuming 3 to 4% of the energy per day is going to double in the next 5 to 6 years.
Yeah, every time I enter in a chat GPT query and I make it complicated, I'm probably burning some
consuming
kilowatt hours
3
there.
to 4
It's
kilowatt
not-
hours.
it's not-
I'm
not
just making
automatic.
that number up.
But then you also have to remember all those factors. Don't forget about the motivation of the utilities. They are purely motivated, come hell or high water, to increase those rates as high as possible because they make more profits and they get to build more infrastructure.
Yep, that's the business. But they're getting squeezed from both ends. They're getting squeezed front of the meter because they have to interconnect all of these big systems to meet the data center
And
demand.
they can't come close to doing it.
And they have to meet electrification demand in the home.
Yeah.
Something's got to give. If you think about it on a first principles basis, our industry is it. This is it. There is no other choice.
We're the cheapest way to generate power, whether it's in utility scale or on a roof or in a backyard or in a balcony. By far and away, the cheapest way of generating kilowatt hours.
We are the most economically viable solution that is here today. Nothing has to be invented.
Yeah.
We are here today, and we are the most economically viable solution. I look at the CalISO app that's on my phone.
Yeah.
I look at it more frequently than probably anybody else because I just find it interesting. I'm fascinated by it. I look at the locational marginal prices around the state. We have somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,000 nodes. And I look at the LMPs for, some gas-powered plants that are not far from where I live. And the LMPs there are 4 cents a kilowatt hour.
Yeah. And plus,
A dozen miles and I'm paying 40 cents a kilowatt hour.
that's at the low end. I mean, I'm 62 cents in the evening, and
the
that's
evening,
why I'm happy to get a battery. And once again, we're the cheapest way to generate electricity, but we're also, with the battery price coming down so fast, it's the cheapest way. So in a year or two, those battery prices are going to come
And this
down
is
really,
not just
really fast.
resi, right? We're talking residential and commercial.
Yeah,
So, for example, our IQ9 is going to be 480 volts, right? We were doing commercial solar for only 208 volts, and now we'll offer for 480 as well. We are going to work on battery solution for commercial. That's a given. We're going to do that as well because that's needed. We already do commercial EV chargers.
Right? We're going to need them here.
That solution will be present.
So, and we talked about, where the industry is going from the standpoint of customers, and it's just going to continue to get better and better after we kind of digest this loss of the 30% tax credit. But what should solar contractors be thinking about? Not the ones that are just trying to get to the end of this year, because we're coming so fast that you either got your plans in place or not. But what do they have to do to survive in 2026 and beyond? 5 more years past that, into the 30s.
I continue to be bullish, very bullish about our industry and on how we are going to do over the next X number of years for the reasons we just talked about. The base demand, the fundamental demand for energy isn't going away. Mm-hmm. If the fundamental demand for energy isn't going away and utility rates continue to go up, we all collectively work on making our systems more efficient, reducing cost, etc. You end up in a situation where demand becomes pretty much endless at that point, right? But we have to stop thinking, I'm a solar company or I'm a solar plus battery company. You'll start looking at use cases which is battery only. You'll start looking at use cases which is bidirectional EV only, which does V2X, right? Or you look at use cases which is solar, battery, EV charger, and all the software and everything, the full enchilada, right? I think what it requires is for us to be innovative and flexible, because change is the name of the game. That's what's happening. And Enphase will continue doing its part in innovation. Let's look at financing, right? Financing and innovation around.
I'm glad you brought up. That's the next big topic. So let's dive into financing.
Absolutely.
And because just in the background, there's a really robust third-party ownership market right now, leasing and PPAs. But with all the uncertainty, not only with the upcoming executive order that's going to happen in the middle of August, but with the changes, the end of TPO, the end of the tax credit, the FIAC issues. Talk to us a little bit about what you see happening on the financing side at a high level. Then we can drill down into Enphase benefits.
And then we'll talk about domestic manufacturing and FIAC. And I think those are really critical topics to discuss. With regards to financing, one last thing when I talked about what else can our industry do? Add more value, right? Can our systems create more value for the homeowner? Anytime you create, so we drive costs down, you create more value for the homeowner, your payback periods decrease. If you look at, even with 30%, in a place like San Diego, even now with NEM3, our payback periods are what? 5.5 years?
Yeah.
And they go to 6.5, 7 years. Inverters are already a 25-year warranty. You have a 25-year product effectively, right? Batteries are going to get there.
Yep.
So payback periods are still very, very, very compelling. But financing must come along because there's the CapEx investment per home's going up. On the financing side, of course, there's a very robust third TPO market already out there. I think it's become more robust over the last couple of years as many, many new TPO players have entered the market. What Enphase is working on, and I'll explain what role we play in there, is bringing TPO like what Lone did, which is to the long tail of installers, bringing TPO to the long tail of installers. Today, it is limited to a few hundred installers, if you may. How do we bring it to the 2,000 installers, right? And that's where Enphase can play a role. So we are working very closely with a number of our third TPO partners to say, how do we, in effect, democratize TPO, right? It's what's missing. And so again, it comes back to being very data rich. We can help our TPO partners by working with them and saying, we can vet the installer as an example. We have all the history on how the systems were installed, what was the quality of installation, how did the system perform over time. We can give them a design tool like Solargraph that helps you standardize on the design. And then, of course, the product itself and the software monitoring and commissioning of the product itself to make sure that, that the product got installed very well, properly. All of these things are considerations for the TPO. And finally, on the back end, is there a very robust, O&M platform? Like, Enphase offers the Enphase Care in partnership with our installer partners. All of those things drive down effectively the cost of financing, because these are the considerations that the TPOs have in order to make sure that their 25-year asset is well protected. Yeah. There are new financing structures also some people are working on, which I think are very interesting. So a lot can be done, and we are very actively working on different financing tools, working with our financing partners, TPOs, to do that. It's interesting, though. I've been on the road, just like when NEM 3 happened. I hit the road, hundreds and hundreds of installers here in California, and I'm doing the same thing now with this transition from, out of 25D. And nationwide, we have been talking to a lot of installers, and there is a substantial group of installers who are saying, no, I'm still going to stay with cash and loan. Small, long-tail installers.
No, I'm raising my hand too. Unless the TPO is really compelling, we can be more efficient, we can be faster, and we can kind of provide a better deal to customers. That's fine. Now, the other thing that we're doing, and we're just kind of discussing this internally, it's a good interest to both installers and to customers, is that thinking back to 2006 and 2005, before the tax credit was really in any way material, and we weren't selling purely on the financial benefits. We were selling, it's going to improve your home value. It's the right thing to do, which people care about. It gives you utility independence. You've got resilience, and, didn't really market that too hard then, but now you've got that resilience and the independence from the utility because you've got batteries that really work. So kind of making sure that goes back into the sales pitch, because I kind of forgot about it for 10 years, and now it's important again.
I agree. I completely agree with you. I think this is part of what I say is increasing the value of your offering, right? For example, we were not pitching VPP programs before, right? We were not doing that. Now you can say, hey, the homeowner can now earn hundreds of dollars, in some cases as much as $1,000 a year, by simply participating in VPP programs. Imagine someday regulations change and we can participate in the capacity market.
Yeah, eventually we will. The tricky thing about the VPP programs is some of them are good and some of them are really bad. And it's hard for the customer to figure it out. But, as long as it's embedded in a trusted source like Enphase with their system, then you're not going to get screwed. But I've seen others that are just hideous.
Yeah, I completely agree. And some places like in the Northeast, VPP programs are very, very lucrative. You can make $1,000 a year simply by participating in VPP programs like the Connected Solutions program in the Northeast. And there's a very lucrative program in Rhode Island, as an example.
Why isn't it more lucrative in California? Because we have the most expensive electricity besides Hawaii. One would think it should be a lot better.
The utilities and those markets work in very mysterious ways. I don't have a very clear answer for it, but there's also a lot more batteries available here, right, than there are in the East Coast. And so there are new utilities who are coming on board with very interesting programs. In fact, including community solar, right? If you go down to Southern California, there are a lot of community programs where they pay homeowners with batteries. It's a very good incentive. So I think in terms of creating value, we talked about VPP grid services, but this again, right, this notion of you get resiliency. You get resiliency for the cost of arbitrage, right? With the meter collar, the delta for resiliency versus arbitrage is pretty much close to zero, right? I'll give you an example. Resiliency was very, very hard before. Now with the way we are doing resiliency, which is you do whole home backup with load rejection, software becoming really sophisticated, everything is seamless. I think it's a very compelling argument. Installer partners of ours who are very reluctant, who are not battery folks before NEM 3, are now all have learned. Have become good at it, have adapted. That's the beauty of our industry. Yeah. We have very smart people in our industry.
Yeah, a lot of these utility programs, virtual power plants, vehicle to grid, they're successful elsewhere. But the California utilities, even though they're regulated, they're very poorly regulated. So don't be surprised when things like VPP, you've got a program, but you're not making $1,000. You're only making a few $100. And the same thing with community solar. Right. California's almost at the bottom of the list when it comes to states that are supporting community solar, because utilities say, hey, that's not going to be as profitable for us as if we put in a new solar farm and more transmission lines.
Yeah, I think my notion is the following, right? What can we do? What are the things can we do to avoid any infrastructure change Can we defer as much of the infrastructure upgrades as possible? Because infrastructure upgrades in the distribution network is mind-bogglingly expensive and very disruptive.
It's a built environment. You got to dig up the roads.
You got to dig up the roads. You got to upgrade your transformer. You got to bring the homes down, multiple homes down for a day, right? And it's very, very expensive. So things like PCS, things like flexible interconnection, something that we are working on.
What's flexible interconnection?
Where the interconnection of the home to the network is not static like we have today. This is your rated PV, this is your rated battery, and this is fixed. Imagine a world where it's completely dynamic, that changes on an hourly basis. It changes based on what's happening on the network. It's based on what your neighbor's doing, what your neighbor's doing, what their solar, what their battery. Imagine a completely dynamic system, and you have an operating envelope where you can buy and sell energy, right? Imagine you're actually trading energy. This is happening actively in Europe.
Yeah, it's happening
and we
where
are
there's
behind, and we need to bring that. We need to enable that here in the U.S. And
we need more deregulated markets. I mean, not that it's necessarily good, but Texas is going to pioneer this, whereas here in California, we've got regulations that aren't really working as for the benefit of the consumers, and we're pretty much locked up.
We don't have a technology problem.
Yeah.
We don't have to invent anything new. We need to implement, and implementation means mostly on the regulation side.
Well, the regulations evolve
just
so much
behind
more slowly than the technology.
Yeah.
Well, before we got started, we were talking a little bit about the balcony solar systems that you've got going on in Europe. Tell us a little bit about what those are and why they're working there and not here yet.
Yeah, we launched our balcony solar product both in Germany and in Belgium. Those are the two countries that allow it today. But more and more countries in Europe are now allowing balcony solar. And what balcony solar basically is, it's a very small system. You can put up, in Germany, for instance, people have 4 modules that they hang off of their balcony. And they have an inverter that they just plug it into the wall. Of course, in classic Enphase way, we really did some really high-class innovation there. And we have made it very sophisticated in terms of, hey, they all have microinverters. They all have monitoring. And because it's IQ8, we also have an auxiliary port, which in the event of an outage, the small system isolates itself, and now you have backup power as long as the sun is shining. We used to call it sunlight backup. So it's a very interesting, it's a purely DIY system, so it's a very small system. You can backfeed into you can pretty much, you have solar and microinverters, plug it into this intelligent gateway, and you plug that into any wall socket. And that's allowed in Europe up to, I believe it's about 800 watts of backfeed. In the US, there are a couple of states that have legislated that it should be allowed. I believe maybe one state right now, it's Utah. But the National Electrical Code needs to still catch up. UL needs to still catch up. There's still some work to be done, but we are ready with the product. And the moment once the NEC and UL are there, we'll release that product. And it's a very nice, again, it's democratizing energy. Like we've always said, it's now not just the purview of single family homes. And now even people in apartments can now, basically get the benefit of solar simply by connecting a simple DIY system on their wall.
Hopefully it'll show up again in Home Depot and Lowe's.
Oh, yes, just like we did before.
We tried that early stage. All right, well, let's take another step back from an installer perspective. What should installers be doing now to prepare for 2026?
Let me first say, here's why I'm bullish about it. I remember going all over California during the NEM 3 transition. And I remember people were very, very concerned that what it would mean to their business. We had 15% battery attach. You were definitely doing batteries at that time already for resiliency.
We were 50 or 60.
Yeah. But on average, across the nation, it's, was 15%. California was also at the same national average of about 15% battery attach. Today, I was there in Southern California just last week meeting with a few hundred installers, and we are at 95% battery attach.
Yeah. Everybody's got it. Yep.
Everybody's got it. And the concern that people had at the time was, I don't know how to do batteries. But again, we have a very smart industry. They very quickly adapted, and they came up with different use cases for batteries. Some of them did grid-tied batteries. Some of them did, small batteries, mostly for arbitrage with limited backup. Somebody did everything, right? I can do backup. I can do full arbitrage, everything. So the industry adapted very quickly. We made products to meet those needs. We built software to meet those needs. Our AI-based software AI/ML-based software is very sophisticated. That helps you arbitrage intelligently. I suspect the same thing will happen with this transition as well. It'll happen, this is my personal view. I think by the second half of 2026, you'll start to see things starting to revive again. And we'll all adapt. We'll become more efficient. We'll drive down our customer acquisition costs. We'll go back, which means we'll go back to our existing homeowners and say, hey, why don't you expand your solar system? Why don't you expand your battery system? Of course, it's only possible if you have an AC coupled system. If you're DC coupled, there's a lot more rip and replace work to be done. People will add EV chargers and bring more and more systems onto the ecosystem, increase the share of wallet per home. And then there'll be a new use case, which has not been done before, which is a battery-only use case.
Well, somebody I know tried that about 10 years ago.
Yes, Perry, you're ahead of the curve there. But I think
it worked.
It
definitely worked great. Yeah. We installed it. I installed the thing myself. It was fine. It's just customers were looking for backup power. Yeah. But now
backup is really simple with a meter collar and the system. With the system controllers, you can do batteries with low rejection. Mm-hmm. It's going to work like a champ. Of course, it has to be because of NEM integrity and all of that stuff. You have to be careful on how the battery gets configured, but that's all doable, configurable in software. But that's another use case. Again, going back to being very creative, which our industry is, going back and saying, okay, I get the rules, and now I need to get creative in the way I do things. I need to become more efficient. I need to reduce my customer acquisition costs. I need to do fast installs. I need to provide O&M services. All of those things are the things that, and then, of course, financing, which our TPO partners are working on, and we are working with them on. I think you will see that there'll be a whole lot of new things that are coming. We are not slowing down our innovation. We are doubling down on it.
Yeah.
We have a whole plethora of new products coming even this year and next year as well and beyond. So we are not slowing down at all. We know we can innovate our way out of any of these things. But as an industry, I'm just tired of things being, us being, how should I say this, whipsawed by externalities that we don't control. I look for a day someday in the future where, hey, our industry is not driven by externalities.
So you want to put the solar coaster in a museum, and 20 years from now, when we're much older, we'll say, "I remember that old solar coaster." Now it's like the oil and gas industry. It's go.
And remember, oil and gas industry gets $40 billion in subsidies. That's what I read somewhere today.
Yep.
And I'm saying that there will come a day where it's already there. We are such an economically viable proposition for the homeowner. For all the reasons we talked about, economics, plus all the benefits that the homeowner gets by installing solar and batteries, I think that we will recover faster than a lot of people think. That's my personal belief. I saw this happening with, like I said, NEM 2, NEM 3 transition. We got very creative. Now California is back, and I think you're going to see something similar.
Smart companies will not suffer that much. They'll recover more quickly. They're going to be proactive. They're going to figure out how to reduce the customer acquisition costs, make sure they don't have a lot of debt, make sure they can make those payments. And I think the United States is eventually going to get smart again. We're kind of on the opposite trend right now, but that's a different issue. But we'll get smart again and realize that we all want to deploy as much possible of the cheapest source of electricity, the most reliable source of electricity. And it is coming from solar and batteries. It's undeniable. And that's going to really change the economics of the whole energy mix in the United States.
Demand's not going away.
Yeah.
Demand's exploding. Demand for energy. Just think, what is the most viable source? Something that can interconnect in weeks. not in 5 years.
So you don't need to spend 7 years to get a gas turbine from Vestas. You don't need to spend 10 years to build a transmission line for 500 miles. It's just all right
We
there.
interconnect in 2 weeks.
Yeah. Well, zero in Europe once we get rid of the regulations.
Yeah.
Yeah, zero. It's just, buy it and turn it
So
on.
fast, and
Yep.
that's what you do.
Yep. Yep.
So, obviously, solar and both residential and commercial solar is the way to go.
Yeah.
Connection is
Yeah.
fast.
All right. Anything else you want to talk about?
I think we talked about, I think one of the big changes that have happened for us is we have doubled down on domestic manufacturing. It's a very big deal for us. And for me also, it was a very personal thing for me, right? Started the company here in California.
First
And-
manufacturing in Morgan Hill, if I recall,
It was just for a very short period of time before we moved it off to
to Flex.
outside of
Yeah,
outside of the U.S. So I'm very proud of the fact that now we manufacture here in the U.S. We manufacture solar, we manufacture our batteries, everything we do here, right? We buy our cells from overseas, but the vast majority of, or even the components we get the components from different countries. We are very, judicious about which regions we get our components from. And so we have done a lot of work in bringing domestic manufacturing back into the U.S. And that's paid off a lot for us because it has kind of, how should I say this? It has made us immune to a lot of pressures like things like FIOC, for example.
Yeah.
Foreign entity of concern is a huge deal,
Yeah.
right? And so we don't have to think about that at all. We are designed here, built here. And so that's not an issue.
Yeah.
And I think domestic content and the benefits that you get from having domestic content, you get the additional 10% ITC kicker for having domestic content. And it makes sense. You manufacture where your customers are.
Well, I also like your product because it's inherently manufacturable in an automated way. I mean, it's not like an iPhone. You've got like thousands of tiny little screws to put in. There's probably some robotic assembly lines that you've got in the U.S. and elsewhere where they're just, chips and plastic goes in and a few fasteners and, the completed units come out and you just have humans to put them in the box.
Yep. We do. And we have automated like crazy. I encourage folks, our Enphase partners, to go visit our factory in Texas. We do take our installer partners on tours. And they can see how their microinverters are manufactured. They can see how their batteries are manufactured. And, you'll really see a very high degree of automation there. And again, it's a testament to the product itself. This is what a semiconductor-based product does. You can make a lot of them and you make one of them. You don't make many different things. You make one product and you make a lot of it.
And it's interesting, the automation on the surface may eliminate some people, some jobs, but the result of automation of a very, very cheap system that generates and stores energy like microinverters and batteries, you create 5 times more jobs on the deployment side. People do the installations, the service, the support. Huge.
And
Once
local jobs. And all those
has to
jobs
be
are
local.
local by
And-
definition.
And it's going to be local wherever anybody needs electricity. It's not localized where this one area. Everybody needs it.
I think that's the beauty of what we do.
Yep.
So I'm like I said, very proud of domestic manufacturing, very proud of the partners that we work with to manufacture domestically. FIOC is a very important consideration. We have to think about FIOC not just from a trade tariff point of view. We have to think about FIOC from a cyber point of view. We are doing a lot of work around cybersecurity, and I think that's important. And especially in light of what happened in Europe with everything that happened with Spain and the new report that came out from the European Solar Industry Association that said there's close to 200 megawatts of solar that's out there that's controlled by a couple of companies.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
that can mess things up.
anything, you have created a, not so safe situation there. And we don't want that ever to happen here in the U.S. So we want to have very hardened, cyber-secure systems out there.
Let me ask you a question. Where is most of your software architecture and planning and development done?
A lot of it is done here in the Bay Area. Our software architects are based here, but we have very broad engineering centers. So we do it here in Fremont. We do it in Texas. We do it in New Zealand, actually in Christchurch. We have a very nice office there. And of course, we do a lot of it in India as well.
Yeah.
So it's very broad. But a lot of our customer service, probably close to 600-700 people, are based out of Boise, Boise, Idaho.
Yeah.
We offer 24/7 customer service. So, of course, they're not there 24/7. You know,
It
we do it in
moves around the
region,
world.
in
Yeah,
India,
yeah.
everywhere. Yeah.
Well, it's good that you do the architecture here because, I'm proud to say, and some people don't agree with me, but I'm proud to say that most of the best software comes here. And when we're looking at companies that have products that we're using, there's a tangible, visible difference in the quality of software and the reliability of the products when it's designed. I hate to say it, but in Silicon Valley.
It starts here. CTO and CTO office is based out of here. And that's by design, right? We want to make sure, because once we set the direction on what the architecture is, the implementation can happen in many different places, but it starts with the architecture. That's why the fundamental decision around AC coupled systems, decentralized decision making. Let's talk about that for just a moment, Barry. Keeping true to what we do, which is, decentralized or distributed architecture. And I always say network parlance, it means the endpoint's very intelligent and they make autonomous decisions. Our microinverters, while each microinverter makes its own autonomous independent decisions. They're all hyper connected and they are all aware of each other, but they make the best decision for
those point
as they
characteristics.
operate. Yeah. Same thing with batteries. Look at our meter collar as an example. We could have centralized that meter collar decision making. Everything that says, hey, is the grid there? Is the grid not there? Should I connect to the grid? Should I disconnect from the grid? Measurements, everything we have actually decentralized. The meter collar has all the intelligence built into it. It's very prolific in informing the rest of the system, its state, but all decisions are moved there. And what that does, and a lot of people don't fully appreciate that, is that it really makes the system much, much more robust. Your reliability goes up substantially because you don't have any complex state machines that's doing everything from monitoring to managing your battery, state of charge, state of health, and managing a microgrid interconnect device in your meter collar. No, they are completely different functions.
Yeah.
Let the meter collar do its job, do what little it does, and do it really, really well.
Design it, teach it, make sure it's working right, that it talks to the rest of the system. That makes sense.
The airplane guys always talk about their systems. They say always aviate, navigate, communicate. Just because you aviate means make sure the plane is always flying.
First thing, make sure you're vertical and above the ground.
Right. And same thing with, navigate means go where you're supposed to go, and communicate, tell everybody where you're going. Yeah. Right. You don't want one system, having a bad interaction with the other system. So similarly, we think about it like that. Just because a single battery or a single micro in a battery is impacted, it shouldn't take your entire system
That's
down.
why you've got so much better reliability on a long-term basis. I figured that out in
philosophically,
2009.
you have to be very true to that.
All right. Completely change the subject. What advice do you have for people in the solar industry to make sure that they got a good balanced quality of life, especially going into 2026?
Mentally, you have to feel very good about what we do. Because we know we are the good guys, right? We are doing the right thing. We are doing the right thing for the world. We are doing the right thing for our children, right? I have a 15-year-old. I always think about, am I doing the right thing for her? And this is one of the most satisfying jobs in that not only do we get to create and invent and build some really, really cool products, but at the same time, you're doing it for all the right reasons.
And that's interesting because I think about the people that stay in the solar industry and they like it. It's in their blood. They want to be altruistic and they kind of wake up in the morning saying, yeah, it might be a little bit stressful, but I'm doing the right thing. Right. I know I'm doing the right thing. There's a lot of our governments doing the wrong thing, but I'm just going to continue to do the right thing. And it really helps with that attitude.
But you cannot ignore your physical health as well, right? Being here, particularly being here in Silicon Valley, this is a very, very, very competitive place. And so is everywhere else in the US. That's why we do we are who we are. And so you have to invest your time in physical health and making sure that, you're exercising. So both physical and mental health is really important. I think the mental health comes along, I really think, because you have to take a step back. And yes, you're in the daily grind, but you got to take a step back and think, hey, I wake up every morning thinking, hey, I'm here to do the right thing and I'm doing the right thing.
Yep. All makes total sense. All right. So how can people get in touch with you?
They can get in touch with me through this podcast. They can, and of course we are always available. You can send an email to Enphase, talk to your sales rep, talk to your customer service rep, Absolutely. We do these things called as customer roundtables, installer roundtables. Every week, we have a group of installers from all regions of the world. And so we may do one for Northern California. We may do one for Belgium. We may do one for South Africa, right? And we have done those. So every week, installers come together on a roundtable, and the whole executive team is there listening to them and getting their feedback. That's what I said. Those of our partners who are the most vocal, I listen to most carefully because they are vocal because they care.
Yeah.
And all these folks who show up on our roundtable are there to give us feedback. And we always start with, tell us what's not working. Tell us, of course, what's working as well. And tell us how, your view on how we can make things better.
And you guys listen.
And
we had a very productive meeting with you guys about a year and a half ago. And
got some great feedback.
Yeah.
Great feedback. And you're seeing the fourth generation architecture. A lot of it is based on that feedback.
Well, and you know what I like, kind of coming all the way back? It really does reduce the total cost of the system. Enphase is on the expensive side from a single component standpoint, but when you look at it holistically throughout the entire experience, it really does reduce that cost. And that's the most important thing that we can all do.
Without a doubt. And it's not for just the installation as well. We'll take care of our partners over the long run. You pick up the phone, we'll answer quickly. Yeah. We have a net promoter score that we track very closely. We are world-class. Mm-hmm. We are 78% NPS, which is definitely a world-class score. Yeah. And we pay very close attention to that. But it's our partners. They are our lifeblood, right?
You got loyalty there because you've been doing it for a long time. All right. That's all the time we have on this week's Energy Show. Thanks, Raghu, for joining me. And then thanks to all of our listeners for tuning in.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's Energy Show.